Hey guys, welcome to another developer interview here at Without Parole. With me this week is lead designer Blake Stone and lead developer Colton Kadlecik from Vitruvius VR, developers of Mervils VR and recently released Shadow Legend VR. Gentlemen, all the way from Ontario, Canada, how are you doing?
Pretty good. How about you?
Doing pretty good. What's in the background, man? What am I looking at? Where are you guys?
So this is a new studio that we moved into about a year ago. So the background here is, just a little bit of design of the building. So some metal brackets and barn door kind of thing. So that's our audio room back there. And then we have some wood walls all around kind of thing.
Awesome. Are you still in Ontario?
Yeah. So it's London, Ontario. So it's like 2 hours west of Toronto kind of thing.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now, this is always fun. We start every developer interview not talking about your games. We're going to start this interview talking about like your background with video games. Like, what did you play as kids? Were you guys gamers growing up?
Oh yeah. Yeah, of course. I really started off with PS1 and like the Crash Bandicoot franchise. So, Crash 1, CTR, Crash Bash, all that, logged thousands of hours, and that's what really launched me into the video game lifestyle.
Nice. Yeah, Crash was classic, man. I was a huge Crash fan on PS1 and 2.
Yeah, and then when it re-released on PS4 a couple years ago, I was so excited.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Actually, Crash Team Racing is one of those games that I've been begging for in VR. So if you guys can, if you know somebody, pull some strings. I don't know. Can you get the license for that? I don't.
And then, I started off in the N64 era. So playing Ocarina of Time, those types of games. And then my next console after that was the original Xbox. So I actually only switched over around the PlayStation 3 to all PlayStation consoles. So yeah. Nice. But I say there's some big ones for me for our game were the Witcher series, Dark Souls, and then the Uncharted series as well, which Colton is a big fan of as well.
Just Naughty Dog fans all around, huh? You didn't skip the Jack and Dexter games, did you?
No, of course not.
Nice. Some of my favorites on PS2. Nice. You guys going to tell me the Vitruvius VR story? Why? What made you decide to get into developing video games? I'm always fascinated to hear this.
So whenever the DK1 was out, maybe 6 years ago, we were roommates together in university at the time. So I saw this cool gadget on Kickstarter, ordered it. And then we tried it out at the college dorm and fell in love with it. So then, after that, we ordered DK2, which really started what was at the time Mushroom Ball. So it was kind of a Super Monkey Ball clone.
With no controller.
Yeah, no controller. So that's when they introduced the head tracking for the headset. So you steered the ball with your head and kind of leaned your body around.
Just kind of leaning and to move forward kind of thing.
Yeah, which, as it turns out, wasn't a great mechanic. People got kind of sick. So that's why Mervils evolved into a controller-based third-person experience.
Nice. Did you have any desire to, or did you look into working for, bigger development studios? Or did you always, out of the gate just go, this is something we want to do on our own?
We were at university together for about 4 years, so we kind of knew once we were done that we were gonna start our own studio. So we didn't really think about getting other jobs kind of thing.
Plus, at the time, VR was so new, there was no other studios.
Yeah.
So we didn't just want to do gaming; we wanted to do VR gaming. So.
And I guess, that's a big question that I've got for you too. And I guess this kind of goes to every VR studio out there. You must be really passionate about VR, because when you look at the audience out there and you say, well, we could either develop a game for 100 million PlayStation 4s or 5 million, or even when you did Mervils, just 1 or 2 million PSVR headsets. Is it just because you're so passionate about VR, or do you think maybe it helps you stand out because you're doing something different than everybody else? Where does this come from?
Yeah, I would say kind of both of those together kind of thing. When we first started out, it was our first game. We were really in love with VR. So it made sense. It would have been harder competing in a big industry with just limited game development knowledge. But then over time, we actually learned how to develop good games. And yeah, now we're still in love with VR, and we're now good at developing VR games, I hope. So yeah, that's kind of how we got to this point now.
How many of you worked on Mervils? How big was the team at that point?
Just me and Colton.
Yeah.
And how big is the team at this point?
You're looking at it.
Yeah.
I gotta say, I mean, it's even looking at Mervils and saying this was made by two guys. I think that's impressive. But then when you look at Shadow Legend and you go, this is made by two guys. I mean, that's almost mind blowing.
Yeah. It took a while, but.
How long did you said that Mervils started as something a little bit different, the Mushroom Ball game, but from start to finish, from conception to release, how long did that take you?
For Mervils, I'd say it's like 2 years, and then for Shadow Legend, it's been about 3 years now, from the launch of Mervils on PlayStation to the launch of Shadow Legend on PlayStation.
What was the reception to Mervils? I over here without Parole, like there's a lot of love for Mervils from me, but then Des always kind of pointed and laughed at me and was like, "What's the attraction?" But there's a solid game there, and I want to know where I stand. I guess does everyone agree with me? Does everyone agree with Des?
I would say most people say it has a lot of charm. I don't know exactly what that means, but I think they like being in third person in a sort of colorful N64, PS1 type world. And yeah, that's kind of what I've got, is that there's a lot of charm. And then it seems like the game design allows for a lot of like exploration and platforming. And so I think the core of the game is good. And then, yeah, just being in VR was a big thing. Initially releasing, like right when the PlayStation VR came out.
And who were the voice actors in that game? Because I think of all the complaints, that's the one that stands out.
So a lot of them were like other YouTubers, like some of our friends. No one really that like professional kind of thing. Like it was more, there's a bunch of like YouTubers, like voices that are in the game that were saying, I can help out with that kind of stuff. And then we realized after that probably wasn't the best idea.
Hey, you take what you can get, right?
Yeah.
Well, so I guess that leads to the biggest question, the question that I reached out to the community and asked everybody. I was like, what questions do you have for Vitruvius? And I mean, everybody, the first question they asked was, how do you go from Mervils to Shadow Legend?
Like we work with a lot of like other like contract 3D modelers, and I think the biggest thing was just knowing how to develop close to AAA game. So a lot of times we were just trying to figure out like how do we even like do these animations? How do we even move in this world? Whereas now we have a better idea of how to actually develop, or what a AAA animation or a AAA model or things like that. Like we just have a better idea of what's actually good when developing games. So I think that was the biggest thing, was that if we could get it to work before, then it was good. Now we're going for both it working and being high quality. So yeah, I would say, it was just the experience from developing Mervils, and then even we learned a ton developing Shadow Legend as well.
Obviously, when things start off on PC and they finally make their way over to PlayStation VR, generally things get downgraded. Did you guys have to downgrade much to get it working on a PlayStation 4?
No, so we really only lost one feature, which was the speech recognition. So on PC, you can actually talk to all the NPCs, and the dialogue you grab in the game, you can actually speak out loud and say it, and it'll highlight as you go along, and so you can actually have a conversation with people in game. But we actually lost that with the PlayStation speech recognition, just because we were using Cortana on Windows, and obviously there's no Cortana on your PlayStation, so we ended up losing that. But in terms of graphics, we don't really see a difference, especially switching from the PSVR headset to Oculus. Like, to us, it's very similar.
Yeah, and that was one of the biggest things we focused on, was how do we make it look good. in the PlayStation VR version, because we've seen a lot of games come over to PlayStation VR that are almost totally different.
Yeah, it's just bare. Like the world is just bare and there's nothing in it.
Yeah, so it was just more optimization so we could keep the graphics looking the same. And so that was a lot of work though, because if you're thinking it took us 3 years to make Shadow Legend, and it took almost 10 months just to do the PlayStation VR version, and the whole game was completely done, other than a few levels and the boss fights at the end that we changed. But it still took another 10 months after the release on PC to make it look as good as it is on PC, kind of thing.
Now, the areas in my review, I said one of my criticisms, which I think all of my criticisms were mild at best, but this one specifically, even though you made full use of every single area, I did find all the areas were kind of on the small side. Now, is that something I could see that being something you'd have to do on the PlayStation, but obviously this was how it was on the PC side of things too. So was that a technical limitation at some point, or is this just the way you designed each level?
Yeah, well, we knew it was going to be coming to PlayStation VR, so we didn't want to max out the PC version.
Yeah.
That was more of a design choice, like right from the beginning, is just focus on like the density of the worlds. And it is like pretty much maxed out on PlayStation right now. Like we couldn't add a whole lot more to our game. I think it was a smart choice, like from the beginning, to build smaller worlds. It made it possible for us to come to PlayStation VR in the end. So I think it was a good call.
But definitely for our next game, that's what we're going to focus on, is like larger worlds and hopefully eliminate the loading between worlds, so it seems more seamless.
Yeah. And then for our next game, that's kind of what we're thinking, is not having the loading, and then it's going to be on the PlayStation 5 with hopefully the PlayStation VR 2. So I think we'll have an easier time porting as well. And it won't even really be like a port, I would say. We might even target like everything all at once, kind of thing, just because the hardware will be very similar at that point.
So you've got a target platform, but do you have like any concepts of what your next game is going to be like, other than no loading screens or less loading screens?
I would say open world sci-fi adventure game, probably like hand-based combat and a shooter kind of thing. So combination of that, and we're hoping to do more of an open world kind of game. It seems like what a lot of people were asking from Shadow Legend. It just wasn't really possible. But I think it will be possible for the next generation console and on PC as well.
Awesome. And a lot of people when they see Shadow Legend, they go, so this is like Skyrim. And obviously it's not at all like Skyrim, other than the setting.
Yeah.
I think even in my review, I struggle to say what kind of game Shadow Legend really was. What would you classify it as?
It's like a combination of an adventure, I'd say adventure exploration, the combination of those two. It doesn't really, it's kind of an RPG, but it's not long enough to be an RPG. Just like the elements of upgrading your skills and your weapons. If it was a longer game, I would probably classify it as that, but it's more of an adventure exploration game set in sort of a medieval Gothic world.
All the stuff that I love doing in Shadow Legend involves like just standing there and looking around going, I mean, obviously searching for all the runes is, the big thing you're doing. And man, like nothing was crazier than saying I still had 2 more runes to find, but being like, I've searched this place from top to bottom. Where could they fucking be, man? And so I would just stop and just stop in the middle of the environment and just look around. And I found myself doing that so often. So not only was it great that it looked so good, but it was such a cool. It was something that I didn't really find myself doing in any other PlayStation VR game. Being like, oh, they somehow managed to get a hidden object game into their action adventure game, and I ended up focusing on that element more than anything else, and I loved it. But then I was like, what game have I played like this before? And I can't think of too many. What was your inspiration for this style of gameplay?
I don't know. I guess it was just like in the beginning we were building a medieval RPG. And then we started to, hide different things. It originally started off as like feathers that you were climbing up these ladders to grab, and stuff like that. And then we're like, well, these, I kind of want to be able to shoot them down with the bow and arrow. So that's what it ended up changing into, the runes. And then we built out the runes side of the story. So yeah, I think it was just more of testing in VR and then giving it to our beta testers too. And those were the ideas they came up with. We didn't really know from the beginning, and I think it is kind of hard to know, since VR is just so new that there's no games like that. So yeah, it was just beta testing and getting people's opinions on the game and what they wanted to do.
I feel like we were pretty fortunate to get a couple new areas that that weren't in the PC version. Is that coming to the PC version at some point?
Yeah, it's on the PC version now as well.
It's on there now.
Yeah.
Now, obviously, getting like a different area, the way the game is structured, it seems kind of ripe for like DLC or more areas to be added later. I know one of our viewers, Robert Meadows, asked if that was something you're considering, whether it be free DLC or paid DLC in the future.
Yeah, we'll probably base it on how well the game's doing. If the game's doing really well, then we'll look into doing a DLC. On the PlayStation version, it kind of is like a DLC already combined into the game at launch. But yeah, we'll see how it's doing. And then, yeah, we already have some ideas of how we can add in new levels and where they would go. So, yeah, we do have some ideas.
Nice.
And I mean, those would probably be free.
Yeah, they would be.
All
Yeah,
the DLCs are just content. ads.
yeah.
Good to know. It's not always the case, right?
Yeah.
Is one of our viewers, Kevgret, you probably heard from him on Reddit. He's very active over there. He said, what's it like to finally publish a game and getting the first bits of feedback from gamers? Is it nerve-wracking?
Yeah, it's pretty nerve-wracking. Because, yeah, you test the game with, say, like 100 people, and then they have their opinions on it, and then you put it out to, the first couple thousand people, and that's when you actually get your real feedback, because people are paying for the game.
Right.
Whereas before, they're just, like, in the beta process, and they're excited to be a part of developing the game. So, yeah, that's really when you get your true feedback. For PlayStation VR, I wasn't as worried, because on PC we launched first, and then we got all that feedback, and based on that feedback we went and changed and added new levels and changed boss fights and changed a ton about the game. So when we were launching for PlayStation VR, we kind of knew those things were fixed already, but we weren't sure if they were totally fixed, because this I'd say PlayStation VR will be on a bigger scale, like more people playing. So we had an idea, but we weren't 100% sure.
Did you have any trouble using the Move controllers, getting all that working properly?
No, not really.
No, that was the port process for the controls was actually pretty easy. We just kind of played some other VR games on the PlayStation, and really went on Reddit and see what everybody else thought of the controls, and then just built them into our game. So
Nice.
it seems to be going well. Like we haven't heard any control or like specific complaints about the controls, so
Yeah.
we're happy with that.
Yeah, it's good to hear. Too many times we'll talk to a developer and they'll say, "Oh yeah, we don't play other games, so we didn't know that people wanted the Skyrim-like controls or whatever." It's always fascinating to hear that.
Yeah, definitely. Like I played Skyrim all the way through from start to finish with the Move controllers, and I kind of knew like how I wanted to play our game even before doing the PlayStation VR port. It just for like submitting to PlayStation and that kind of stuff, though, like we have to put the teleportation in from the start, just so if anyone's new to VR or they get motion sickness in VR, that you're launching our game and teleportation is the option to start off with. But yeah, then we added in every other option to get it to be smooth locomotion, smooth turning, and turn off the field of view blinders.
Yeah, it's awesome. It's too often, all the time, happens all the time. Never get that stuff at launch. Always have click turning at launch. Always have mandatory blinders at launch. So it was refreshing to see that this came and with left-handed support. It's a nice bonus.
Yeah, well, and like that's such a waste. Like other developers have already gone through this process of getting these patches out, or people being mad. So like, I don't know.
Yeah,
it seems kind of obvious to just listen.
I think, yeah, we're coming in at a time when we've already seen other developers go through these problems. If we were launching this 2 or 3 years ago, maybe we would have made the same mistakes just because there was nothing else to go on. But at this point, it's pretty easy just to pick up one other game and figure out what the controls are going to be.
So obviously playing through Skyrim, is a good learning tool. But just for funsies, do you guys play any other PlayStation VR games?
Yeah, like Blood and Truth, Astrobot, Moss. I would say the funny thing is, like, our game is a first person game with the Move controllers. But I'd say, yeah, one of my favorite games is actually Moss, just with the DualShock 4 on the PlayStation VR. I don't know why, but yeah, it's just I don't know. You're in that world. It is sort of like a medieval kind of thing as well, and it kind of almost combines Mervils and Shadow Legend, like, slightly. So yeah.
Yeah, something special about that one for sure.
Yeah.
What about you, Colton?
Yeah, so I've played, I think the first game I played was Riggs, way back when the servers were still on. So I played that quite a bit. And then I played, the classics like Beat Saber, Super Hot, the must-haves. I don't know what the latest one I've played was. Maybe that Static game, the hands in the box game.
Static's great.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Nice.
But yeah, we spent a lot of time building our own game, so I don't have a whole lot of time to try out other ones. But
Understandable.
When we do get to try, it's more like market research kind of thing.
Nice. Now, as you guys, as you ramp up and start preparing for a PlayStation 5 game, is it still just going to be the two of you and outsource what you need to, or are you going to start building your team up a bit?
So we already have 2 people lined up, new 3D modeler and 3D animator that we're going to be bringing on for our next game. And then depending on how well our game does on PlayStation, then we'll look into like how many more people we can bring on. But yeah, I'd say a team around like 4 to 6 for our next game. So yeah, we'll be able to do some bigger things, have a longer game kind of thing.
Excellent. Well, we'll be obviously keeping a really close eye on whatever you guys do next, because I don't know if everybody knows this. I've mentioned this before, but Blake and I go way back. The first time I ever got an email from Blake was I think I had like 1,000 subscribers, and he was like, "Hey, I got a game coming out on PlayStation VR. Do you want to check it out?" And I was like, "Oh, I didn't know people did this. I didn't know I could, that people sent games out like before they came out for me to actually check out." I thought it was the most amazing thing ever. Now it's obviously pretty commonplace, but you were the first one to actually reach out and do that. And so I've always remembered that. And been these guys know how to promote their game. I like it.
Yeah.
It's good stuff.
Yeah.
Nice. You guys got anything to add before we wrap this thing up?
I don't think so. We're working on, right now I'm going to go back and start testing the latest patch. So it'll just be
3D rudder support, and yeah, once that's approved on the store, then we'll have that, and then we're just sort of looking at crash logs and stuff like that right now. So I think only 2 people have crashed our game so far, which is
not bad.
Good. So yeah,
right?
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, Colton, Blake, thank you very, very much for hanging out. Congratulations. I hope that Shadow Legend sells bazillion. I think I just made up a number. I was trying to say a bazillion copies. And I hope that, everything that you guys do is super successful, because obviously you've got a real passion for this. And I can't wait till our next interview when we're talking about your next game. It's going to be great.
Yeah. All right. Yeah. Thanks, Brian.
Well, guys, thank you so much. Have an awesome day.
Yeah. You too.